Yo everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys are having an absolutely fantastic kick butt day today so far. So guys, today's video we're going to be going over the 7 worst brawlers inside of Brawl Stars and appropriate buffs that they can receive in order to make their character just a little bit more viable in the meta. Now the reason we're pinpointing on the worst brawlers is because I feel like as a community we all have a general idea of who are the OP brawlers ravaging the meta that desperately need nerfs moving forward. And it's because they're being played a lot and talked about a lot, so our attention is focused more on the brawlers at the top, where I feel like the brawlers at the bottom get neglected just a little bit. And if they were buffed, I feel like the meta would be a little bit more diverse and exciting, because these brawlers have been at the bottom for quite a while now, and I'd love to see them get buffed. Now guys, you all know I love to make these types of videos a discussion, so make sure to leave your opinions in the comments down below. I would love to read through them and see what you all are thinking. So guys, with that being said, let's hop straight away into it. Here we go. Okay guys, so before we hop straight away into the brawlers that need buffs in the meta, I just want to bring up that this list is in chronological order. So we're going to be starting off with the 7th worst brawler and moving ever so closer to the number 1 worst brawler in the meta that needs a buff desperately. So starting off with the 7th worst brawler inside of Brawl Stars, and that goes to Dynamike. Now guys, I've been saying this time and time again in my videos, and that is the gap between Barley and Dynamike is so dang massive, where Barley is a top tier brawler right now and Dynamike is closer to the bottom, and it all comes down to their control. What I've noticed right now in the meta is control based team comps are thriving, where sometimes you can fit in an aggro brawler and that can help in your favor, but most of the time if you have a control team comp like in Siege or in Gem Grab, you will win the game, and Barley has that control factor because of his consistent chip damage, where if you take a look at Dynamike, he has insane damage. He can dish out a lot of damage with his super as well as his basic attack. However, it can be really difficult to land. I've come to find out that Dynamike is a very high skill cap brawler. You have to be a certain brawler to be able to land your shots consistently in order to do anything for your team. So what I propose in order to make Dynamike a little bit more relevant in the meta is to make his radius a little bit bigger. Now if we compare Dynamike and Barley's attacks, there is a huge difference that we can see, and that is Barley's attacks linger, which inherently allows him to have a little bit better control when compared to Dynamike. Yes, Dynamike packs a huge punch if he can land his shots as well as his super, but when you're taking a look at the value of control that Barley brings, Dynamike just doesn't stack up. But if you increase the radius of Dynamike's basic attack, it'll allow you to land your shots a little bit more consistently, allowing you in turn to have a little bit more consistent damage on the map, which Barley excels at and Dynamike right now does not, depending on the player playing with him. So buff to Dynamike, increase the radius of his attack. Next, moving on to number 6, and that is Frank. Now, I absolutely adore Frank. Frank's mechanics is what I love most about him. It's so dang unique. You guys know how much I love unique mechanics inside of Brawl Stars, but he is a little bit lackluster in the meta as of right now. Frank on paper seems absolutely insane. A brawler that feels like he should be destroying the meta, especially with his stats. He has the highest health inside of Brawl Stars, tied with the highest health with El Primo. His attack is really good with a really fast reload speed and piercing damage on top of that, as well as he has the best stun inside of the game. It keeps the brawler in their place for around 3 seconds, which is crazy. However, there is one thing holding him back, and that is his attack delay. So I'd like to see a decrease in his attack delay. Right now in the meta, Frank is taken advantage of so dang easily. In my opinion, one of the easiest brawlers to counter in the game right now. All you really need is a brawler with kickback and a little bit of decent damage, such as Shelly or the tankier units, or brawlers with mobility to dance around him so it's hard to hit him. There are so many ways to get around Frank's attacks. Moving on to number 5, and that is your boy El Primo. And guys, I feel like El Primo has been on the bottom half of all the brawlers in the meta when it comes to how good they are for the longest time, and it breaks my heart. I want to see my boy El Primo do good in this meta, but I feel like that's the biggest problem when you see him being played or buffs and nerfs coming his way, is because he's kind of torn in between the two. When you first get El Primo, he's actually pretty decent. He's easy to push trophies up on. Perfect example is the Road to Purple Iron Man challenge. I got him up so high so fast, but then I hit this wall where it was so hard to go up against brawlers that have been playing this game for a decent amount of time. So when you take a look at competitive play, Primo is actually pretty difficult to push up unless you have good players on your team and you have a solidified team comp as well as the right game mode like Brawl Ball or specific gem grab maps. So the idea that I've been flirting with in order to buff El Primo that I would love to see is an attack range increase, kind of like Rosa. If you guys have been playing with Primo and Rosa at the the same time, you'll notice that Rose's attack distance is a little bit longer than El Primo's. I would love to see just a slight increase to El Primo so he can track down brawlers a little bit easier than he can now. I feel like right now when you're trying to get to a brawler and they're just kiting away from you, kind of keeping their distance and dishing out damage, there's nothing more frustrating when you can't get on top of that brawler and do what you're supposed to do with El Primo. So I'd like to see an increase to his attack range. Moving on to number 4, and that is your girl, Terra. And guys, I feel like I never would have seen this day where Terra would be closer to the bottom of the tier list, where literally her whole entire journey through Brawl Stars has been top 10, top 5 best brawlers inside of the game, and it all is attributed to her super. And I feel like, again, that's her biggest problem when it comes to buffs and nerfs, because when you have this really OP element to your character, if you buff a brawler in a wrong way, then that brawler would be ravaging the meta, because you have, on number 1, her character is good, and then you'd have a super on top of that wins games in and of itself. So I want to make this clear, Terra's super is still the best super inside of Brawl Stars, hands down. It's quite honestly what carries her in competitive play. When you're playing Terra at higher trophies, the only things going through your mind is when can I get this super and how can I play it in an effective way. But, and there's always a but, I think her super is the thing that's holding her back in a sense when it comes to nerfs and buffs. Whenever you have an OP element inside Brawl Stars, it makes it incredibly difficult to buff them, and we've seen this time and time again right now with Terra, as well as, for example, in the past with Mortis in Brawl Ball when he could dribble really well. And I remember the whole talk of the town when Mortis was really good in Brawl Ball is how weak he was in the other game modes. But if a brawler is extremely OP in one specific minute element of the meta, whether that be a game mode or a mechanic such as a super, if they get a buff on top of that, their main character might be balanced in other areas of the game, but they'll be absolutely broken in that one specific area. We've seen it with Mortis. And the only way to fix this so everything is balanced is to nerf the thing that's OP about the brawler and buff the things to make them balanced in the other areas that they might not be so good in. Again, we've seen this with Mortis, where they didn't make the change to his character, but they made the change to Brawl Ball, so then they could buff his character so that he'd be a little bit more balanced across all game modes, not just Brawl Ball. So I'd love to see a nerf to her super, maybe a super regeneration rate decrease, and a buff to her overall character. I'd like to see her with a little bit more health, so she's not just that brawler at long range poke damage, just trying to charge up her super, or maybe just an attack damage increase, something simple, just to make her more of a threat in other game modes. Next, moving on to the third worst brawler inside of Brawl Stars, and that is Poco, and it's very simple as to why he isn't that crazy good in the meta, and that is his ability to deal some actual damage. When it comes to like tankier units or shotgunners, they can literally just walk up to Poco. Yes, he can get a super and heal up his teammates, but if you just walk straight at Poco, he is forced to retreat because he doesn't have that damage to keep them in their place. I mean, if a Rosa is coming in on Poco, you're as good as dead. Also, if you're taking a look at the game modes that Poco can actually push decently well in, it's confined to just a few, which in my opinion I feel like isn't that crazy good for a brawler when you're trying to balance them. In my opinion, a balanced brawler can find a role in every single game mode and play somewhat decent. Maybe not the best in, but can serve a purpose for their team comp. And Poco is confined to, in my opinion, number 1, his best game mode, Gem Grab as the gem carrier, which I don't think he's even that crazy good at. There are brawlers that are better at than him as the gem carrier, as well as he's decent at Brawl Ball. You can kind of make him work in there, as well as he's somewhat decent in some Siege team comps. I've seen him being played in that game mode a little bit. So the buff that I'd love to see given to Poco is a straight line attack damage increase. It may cause some problems to the brawlers that are a little bit weaker in the meta, the lower health brawlers, being able to like 3-shot them with Poco, but the main objective for those weaker brawlers is to kind of stay out of the line of fire or play in the back, or the longer range brawlers, so they shouldn't really be a problem for Poco. And the biggest problem that Poco has is warding off the brawlers that have a little bit higher health. Next, moving on to the second worst brawler inside of Brawl Stars, and that goes to Piper. Now this pick can get misinterpreted very easily. She is incredibly good on Bounty. Top tier in Bounty. Top 3 best brawlers that you can play inside of that game mode. However, every single other game mode other than Bounty, she is god-awful in. This is another perfect example of what we were talking about with Terra. When you have a really good element inside of Brawl Stars, it makes it incredibly difficult to buff them in a very good way in order to make them balanced in multiple different game modes. Because she does so dang good on Bounty, since the maps kind of cater to her build, she's a sniper, she has long range pressure, and she deals really significant damage, she's good in Bounty. But if you buff her character to make her a little bit more playable on the other game modes, she would be incredibly dominant, a monster inside of Bounty, not even fun to play in that specific game mode. So it comes to this, we have to nerf the thing that's good about her, and then buff something else to make her a little bit more balanced inside the meta. So the changes to Piper that I think would make her a little bit more balanced across the board, so we can see her being played in other game modes other than Bounty, would be a nerf to her range, so that she wouldn't be as crazy good or broken on Bounty, the maps that kind of cater to the longer range brawlers, as well as increase her attack speed and reload speed, so she's not just that brawler that's like a one and done. You need to land one of your shots to deal that significant damage. I feel like the number one thing that Piper kind of lacks in the meta to play on the other game modes is a little bit of scrappiness, her ability to kind of get into the thick of things and deal some damage, or getting to a spot where she can make a serious play without the risk of her getting into a situation where a brawler is going to get right on top of her and she's going to die. And the number one worst brawler inside the game, and that award, unfortunately, goes to my girl, Shelly. Now, I had some high hopes for Shelly in this meta moving forward after the buffs that she received, because the buffs that she got really worked to her character, or the ways that she's being played at a higher caliber inside of this game, where she's a shotgunner. Yes, she does really good damage at close range, but she a lot of the time is doing that annoying poke damage, keeping brawlers low at her maximum range. And as you all know, the buffs that she received was an attack speed increase as well as range increase, maximum range. But in my opinion, it just wasn't enough. I feel like she's very lackluster in the meta right now. You may be seeing her being played a lot at lower trophy counts and thriving, but at competitive play, she is rarely seen. You never seeing her being played in the competitive scene, only on a handful of maps, which kind of begs the question of that problem that we have inside Brawl Stars, where if you buff a brawler in order to make her a little bit better for competitive play, you then in turn buff her for the players that are kind of playing this game a little bit more casually, so that Shelly would be a pretty dang big nuisance at that caliber, but then we'd be seeing her being played a little bit more balanced at a specific range. So maybe something just needs to be changed about her overall character. But I think an appropriate buff to Shelly in order to see her a little bit more at competitive play would be a movement speed increase, as well as max damage at long range. Right now she does like 480 damage, chip damage, if you land one of her shells, so at maximum range. Maybe make it like 500. Actually, it might be like 420. It's somewhere in that range. If you make it like 500 base damage so that she can do something at her maximum range, kind of charging up her super, be a nuisance, as well as that movement speed increase so that she can get on top of brawlers a little bit faster, make her a little bit more of a scrappy shotgunner brawler, which is what she kind of is right now. She has longer range. She's not that tank shotgunner that Bull is, and I feel like that kind of benefit her character and playstyle. If you have that movement speed, she makes her a little bit more scrappy. She could be in more places at once, in more pivotal places. But yeah, the buff that I'd love to see for Shelly is a slight movement speed increase as well as a damage increase. Maybe, just maybe, we'd see her flourish in the competitive gameplay. You never know. Now, at the end of the video here, I'm going to express which change I want to see the most out of these 7 buffs that I went over in today's video, and that goes to Piper. Guys, I want to see Piper flourish in this meta in other game modes. I'm sick of her being played strictly on Bounty. Whenever I see Piper being played as a gem carrier and gem grab, I'm like, yes, this is going to be a fun game. I cannot wait to see what this Piper does. I feel like her mechanics are really fun. She's such a fun brawler to play with, and I'd love to see her moving forward in other game modes. I want to see her dominate in Showdown. I want to see her dominate maybe in Brawl Ball. And it's so funny when you say those things. It's like, Piper and Brawl Ball, that's not going to work. Heck no. Piper and Siege, that'd be pretty cool, right? But yeah, guys, that's going to be the end of the video. Let me know you guys are thinking about the changes that I made in today's video. Let me know you guys would change. What brawlers do you think need buffs inside the game? Who do you think are the worst brawlers inside the meta? If you don't agree with my list, like I said before, I love the discussion on these types of videos. So guys, if you did find the video informative and you liked it, make sure to slap a like on it, as well as consider hitting that subscribe button down below, being a part of the Ray fam. Guys, we're getting super close to 100,000. It's going to be quite the moment. So guys, with that being said, make sure to keep having fun with Brawl Stars, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out.